Good morning, everyone. Teachers and students, thank you for allowing us into your classrooms today. And welcome to those of you watching the live stream on nctr.ca. We're honored that you've joined us. My name is Denis Gertin, and I'm located in Ottawa on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I would like to begin by acknowledging the drum and the elders who joined us live from the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. Every day this week at the NCTR, firekeepers tended to the sacred fire with the intent of bringing healing to residential school survivors and also to each and every one of us as we reflect on the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples of this land on this very first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Today's session, entitled Beyond Orange Shirt Day, was recorded earlier. Knowledge keepers and residential school survivors Agnes Jack and Phyllis Webstad will share a unique collection of truths, which will give us an up-close look at what life was like before, during, and after their residential school experiences. The session today is most appropriate for high school students and up. Thank you for being with us and wishing you all a memorable and reflective National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Wade Huhuedip, Phyllis Webstad Rensquest, Strachum Chatstum Slaquin. What I just said is hello everyone. My name is Phyllis Webstad. I'm from the Canoe Creek Dog Creek First Nation. I'm coming to you today from Shawetmchuluk, the land of the Shuswap in Williams Lake, BC. I'm standing on the ground of the former St. Joseph Mission, located about 20 minutes southwest of Williams Lake, BC. 3 generations of my family attended the residential school on the grounds that I'm at. The building that I attended was right behind me. It's no longer there. It was taken down in the early 1990s. The mission, as we called it, was a Catholic-run school, open from 1891 to 1981. This past September, our family published a book called Beyond the Orange Shirt Story. It was released September 1st of 2021, published by Medicine Wheel Education out of Victoria, BC. It tells of 6 generations of my family's story, beginning with my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, my eldest aunt, myself, and my Aunt Agnes, that's with me, my mother's sister, as well as my son and my 2 oldest grandchildren also have a chapter in here, as well as my teacher. When I went here in 1974, everybody was bused into public school into Williams Lake, about 20 minutes away. And I found my teacher, and she also has a chapter in this book. I'll read a section of the book on page 12. It's called Life During My Residential School Experience. I turned 6 in July 1973, the age for school. I was not unlike other children. I needed something new to wear for my first day of school. Gran and I went to town on the stage to buy something to go to school in. I chose a bright orange shirt with a shoelace string in front. It was bright and exciting, just like I felt to be going to school for the first time. If I was told what was to come, I don't recall. Even if I was told, it wouldn't have meant anything. All I knew was that I was now old enough to go to school, and that's what I wanted to do. I remember the morning that my cousin and I would wear our new clothes. We were jumping on the bed, excited to be going to school. We took the stage to the mission, about a 2-hour ride. I can remember arriving at the mission, which would have been just directly behind me. The building was huge, unlike any building I'd ever seen before. I remember lots of crying and the feeling of terror. Pee your pants terror. When my clothing, including my new orange shirt, was taken, it didn't matter how much I protested or told them I wanted it back. They didn't listen. This was the beginning of that feeling that I didn't matter. We were made to take a shower. More terror. My baths were by the stove at Grand's. I'd never seen water coming out of the walls before. All of us little kids were terrified and crying. We each had our own bed, one in rows of beds. There was a washroom with lots of toilets and sinks. That's the story of my orange shirt when I first came to the mission in 1974, 73, 74. And this is the picture of me when, one of two pictures that I have when I went here for that year. So I'm third generation residential school survivor. That means that my grandmother was the first generation to attend. She went here from 1925 to 1935. All of my grandmother's 10 children attended, including my mother and my aunt. My mother attended from 1954 to 1964. I'll turn it over to my Aunt Agnes to talk about a couple sections of the book that she has chosen. So I'll turn it over to my aunt. She is my mother's sister.
Hello, my name is Agnes Jack. I'm from the Strachan First Nation. I attended residential school here in 1956, and I went away for 4 years when I contracted tuberculosis, and I came back when I was in grade 5 till I was in grade 9. But in this book, Beyond the Orange Shirt Story, I start out talking about growing up at home and feeling safe and feeling loved and cared for and being held and eating well and spending a lot of time out on the land doing a lot of cultural kind of things. And then I knew my older siblings were coming to the residential school. I didn't know the 3 oldest ones because they were being raised by my grandmother and my uncle. But I remember when my sister Rose started coming to residential school, and then when she came home, she'd be singing songs and skipping. And I used to think it would be a place I'd like to go. And then when I was 6 years old, my brother Clarence and I were taken from Dock Creek. We came on the Dock Creek stage. The stage driver came directly to my grandmother's house to pick us up. My mother had given us baths that morning and had gotten us some nice clean clothes, and I was excited because we were going somewhere, but it turned out that my mother didn't come with us. We were brought here to the residential school. We came from the other end of the valley, and when we came around the corner, I seen that big building, the residential school building that used to be here, and I thought, my heart just seemed to jump in my throat. I got all choked up, thinking I'm going to prison. Someone must have told me what a prison was about when I was little, and I could feel my heart just beating and wondering what I was coming to. And my brother Clarence was with me, and I found out years later when I asked my mother where my father was the day that we were taken to residential school, because I knew he wouldn't have let them take us. And I found out that he'd been taken to Ocala prison. It was a place where our people were taken to down in the lower mainland when they'd break any of the Indian Act policies, and one of them was not allowing their children to be taken away to residential school. Anyways, when I started here, my older sisters met me, and my brother was taken to the boys' side by our cousins from the Harry family, my Aunt Felicia's boys, and I just I remember I couldn't get over the noise, just the loud noise in the play hall there were 150 girls, and then we went in to have lunch, I guess, and just the noise in the dining room I found it very irritating and deafening. The knives and spoons hitting the dishes and people chattering, and I couldn't. I remember the food. I couldn't recognize what we were given, but I was told I had to eat what was there. But I got very sick that first year, and I was sent to Kokalitsa Indian Hospital. My mother wasn't told that I was sent away to the hospital. The way she found out was when my siblings went home for the summer. I was sent down there in the spring. I didn't even go home for Christmas that year because I was so sick. But I'd like to read a little bit from my nephew Jeremy's story. First day of school on page 65. I'll read down there at the bottom of the paragraph. I remember my auntie took me in her old Ford truck. We used to call the truck Brew. We traveled through Montana all the way around back up to the border and came up to Saskatchewan. It was a memorable trip, to say the least. The hardest time was when my auntie left me there, and I was all by myself and I didn't know anybody. The memories on the impacts on the next page, the memories of going there the first time, leaving my own province and my comfort zone. I will always remember some of the people that I went to school there with. There was the memory that sometimes it was fearful, and when I look back on it, it was because I was always alone. I always felt alone. And that's exactly how I felt when I started school here. When I got my nephew to Duck Lake, Saskatchewan, where he was going to be going to school because of his interest in hockey. We got directions to the school, and as we were approaching, I thought to myself, oh my God, it's a residential school. And I didn't want to leave my nephew there, but he was so excited about going to a hockey school. And he got he got an orientation, and I got a tour of the building. And I didn't ask any questions because I knew what the dorms and the classrooms and that would look like, similar to the school that I went to here. Anyways, when I was done with the tour, I went to see Jeremy, and he was showing me the dormitory where he was going to be staying. We got his stuff from the truck, and we brought his bags in, and all this time I was feeling very sad inside. I was hurting because I was leaving him there. And when I drove away, I stopped when I got outside of the school because I didn't want him to see me. I pulled over, stopped my truck, and I cried. Anyways, when I got home, back to Dog Creek, I went straight to my mother's place, and I told her where I had taken Jeremy. And I told her, Mom, it's a residential school. And I said to her, I cried when I left him there. And I said to her, Mom, I honor you for having 10 of us taken away from you to go to residential school. I told her, I don't know how you did it, because I said that to me that was just one person, my nephew Jeremy, and I told her it broke my heart. I could never go through that 10 times. I told her it would kill me. And we both cried together. But I was so happy when Jeremy came back. When he said that there were only 2 in grade 8 and he either had to go back 1 year or go up to grade 9, and he wouldn't do either. But I used to count the days, the years, the days that I would leave this place. When we'd go home for the summer, we'd completely forget about the place. We never talked about it with our family or with each other, with our parents or anyone. We just went home and we stepped right back into our culture, the hunting, the fishing, the gathering, spending time out on the land, just enjoying being a family. And then about the middle of August, we'd start, anyways, I would start shutting down my emotions because I knew that I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me once I came back here. I had to be strong. I had to not allow the nuns to get to me. I used to escape a lot of times in my thoughts. When the Mother Superior would be lecturing us, I would shut her off and I'd start thinking about my family back home. My grandmother, my aunts and uncles, my mom and dad, my younger sister and what they would be doing. 3 of my youngest siblings were born while I was away in the hospital. So it was just my sister Vera at home at that time, and my mind would go back there. And then another escape that I found worked for me was I realized the nuns wanted us to be good little Catholic girls. So I realized that if I went to Mass more often, they would leave me alone. They wouldn't push my buttons so much. I would get chores where I didn't have to be supervised. I didn't have to have a nun breathing down my back. I started finding ways of escaping in my own mind from the day-to-day trauma that was taking place, even in the classroom when it was happening, where the teachers would pick on us and give us a rough time. And I used to think that the priest who was the principal here at the school, Father O'Connor, who became Bishop O'Connor later, I used to think that he gave told the nicest stories during the Mass on Sundays. And then when I found out what he had been doing with the girls in the pipe and drum band, that he had, I would say, sexually molested and raped the girls in the pipe band. I was just so hurt by that, thinking that they made us believe, the priests and the nuns, they made us believe that they were doing good things for us, especially the priests and the brothers. And when I realized what was happening with the boys, my brothers, the sexual abuse that was taking place, I turned away from the church for a while, but then I realized it wasn't the church, it was the individuals. But when the apology came through, the government's apology, I didn't listen to it. I felt, and later when I read parts of the apology, I thought it was pretty empty. I thought the church, the Pope, head of the Catholic Church, should have apologized for what had taken place, because that's who was creating was abusing and hurting emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, hurting the children here in the school. And it seems having no conscience about it. I thought the church should have apologized as well. And it took me a long time after I left this place just to stop having nightmares about being back here. I would have nightmares that I was back in residential school, and I'd remind myself in my dreams, you're no longer there, you left that place. I think it was when I went into a treatment program when I was chief in our community. We had a treatment program on the reserve. I think that was when I quit having those nightmares about being taken away. One of the dreams I used to have was being at my mom and dad's meadow, being at Francis Meadow, and my brother Clarence and I standing in front of my mother, and this lady walking down the path. I didn't know who she was. She had long hair, and it made me realize she was there to take my brother and I away from our mother and father, and so we hid behind our mother's dress. We were behind her and we were watching this lady coming, and I started shaking, and then I'd wake up before she got to where we were. And I guess that was part of the dreams that my mind as a child came up with, being taken away from my mother and father. And I'd always argue in my head that my parents were good people, that they weren't lazy, they weren't a bunch of drunks, they weren't stupid. My mother came to this school for 10 years, and my grandmother, even though she didn't have an education, was a very, very smart woman, and so was my father. I found was a very, very smart man for the things that he had to know as a Aboriginal person. I didn't know we had to live on a reserve because we were all over the place. Wherever my dad could get work, contracting, putting up hay or building a fence or digging a ditch or whatever he had to do, we were out on the land. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I realized that Dock Creek, Pinot Creek communities were reserves, were Indian reserves. After my experiences with my nephew Jeremy, I used to always think, over my dead body, will anyone take any of my nieces and nephews and put them through that, what we had to go through in a cold, uncaring place. I worked hard in my studies to prove to the nuns, and I guess to myself, that I am a smart person. I've always believed that we carry the memories of our people who have gone by. And I know from my mother and my grandmother, my father, I didn't know my father's parents, but I know our people were smart people, were hardworking people, were caring, and we were shown that every day. And that's one thing that I really missed when I was in this school, was the love and care that I felt every day as a child. I felt safe. I knew I was being taken care of. I had no reason to hurt physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally when I was living at home. And I try my best to provide that kind of a relationship with each of my nieces and nephews and my godchildren. I thank you for listening to my story, my experiences. Kuksjan.
I am going to read some on page 25 and 26. My great-grandmother, Suzanne Edward Jim. Great-grandmother Suzanne grew up living in a traditional Shwepmch or Shuswap pit home at Big Lake, or now known as Gustafson Lake. Her first language was Shwepmch Jean. She could understand and speak English as well. Great-grandmother Suzanne never drank alcohol. She had a sense of humor and was easygoing. She loved to dance, sing, listen to music on the radio, and bake bread. When she would dance, everyone would disappear because they didn't want to be made to dance with her. She was a hard worker, and she loved to tell funny stories too. She made the best bread. Her children used to hang around outside and wait for the bread to be ready. She was an amazing cook, and she always cooked potatoes. She loved porcupine and rabbit. Suzanne was a devout Catholic. I believe her mother, Madeline, was also Catholic, and I'm not sure beyond that. Great-grandmother Suzanne attended church and knew the prayers and hymns in Shuswap. In church, she often led the prayers taught to her by Father Thomas. My Aunt Teresa recalls that Father Thomas learned our language and taught the older generation the prayers and hymns. My Granny Suzanne really believed in the Catholic faith, her and my mom Lena. I believe that's why they lived so long. Suzanne did not attend residential school, and she did not know how to read and write. Aunt Teresa says that Suzanne was the first mother in our family who watched her daughter, Lena, leave to attend a residential school. When Lena was old enough, she attended residential school. My great-grandmother Suzanne gave Lena 2 sweaters so that she could be warm in the winter. The sister at the school took one away and gave it to another girl. Out of all of Suzanne's children, only Lena went to residential school. Suzanne would visit Lena at the residential school by horseback. I'll read a little bit on the chapter of my grandmother Helena, or Lena Jack, as she was known. Her maiden name was Billy. Grand Lena lived at Spettin, or Big Lake as we call it. The name on the map is Gustafson Lake. She lived there with her mother Suzanne and her stepdad George. George built a pit house at Spettin in 1925, the same time Gran went off to school. Gran told me once that a man helped George cut the logs in half. The ends of the logs were circular, also that they made fire in the pit house and the smoke escaped through an opening in the top. It was mainly a winter home. When I asked Gran what happened to the pit house, she didn't remember, nor did she remember the exact location of it at Big Lake. It wasn't until 1940 that George built a cabin above ground to replace the underground pit house. Gran's first marriage to Moffat Jack was an arranged marriage, the last in our family. They were married on November 1st, 1936, right here actually at the mission, when Gran was 18 and Moffat was 32 at the St. Joseph Mission, the same place she had previously attended residential school for 10 years. She loved to be out on the land with her family, traveling, camping out and berry picking. She loved to dance. I remember her dancing around the house with her arms bent towards her body, elbows in the air, and she'd be dancing around. She was light on her feet as she danced. I loved watching her dance. And the way that we always do that, it's like this, and she'd be dancing around. She'd be really light on her feet. I don't know if it was a traditional dance or...
Probably was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should do that next time I'm at Powwow. I'll go out there and dance like Granny. But yeah, so that's a memory that I have of her too, is she's always dancing and having fun. Gran was brought to the Catholic-run St. Joseph Mission Residential School in 1925. She was 6 years old, turning 7 on September 28th. Yeah, so there's, we worked a lot on this book. Myself, my aunt, my cousin Tracy helped as well, my mom, my Aunt Teresa, and we all gathered the stories, and my friend Joan Sorley as well helped to do some of the editing, and Agnes did some, and it took a few years to do this book, and so the result is 6 generations of our family's history. And our tradition is oral. Granny was the first one to learn how to read and write, so they did not write things down, and so I've taken it upon myself, and Agnes as well. Agnes is working on a book that will be published in the near future, to write things down for the future generations in our family so that they have our history. So, because I don't have that. I would love to have seen some of the stories like that my great-grandmother would have told or would have written. So with this book and the other books, it's a start, and there's also talk about publishing some of the just little snippets of stories within our family, of funny stories. And so yeah, so Gukshjam, thank you for tuning in today, September 30th, for Canada's first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, also known as Orange Shirt Day. So Gukshjam, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Agnes. Thank you, Phyllis. As I had mentioned, this session was pre-recorded, and heartfelt journey explained to us from Agnes and Phyllis. Thank you for joining us for the session today. Just a reminder to everyone that Reconciliation and Me, a special broadcast by APTN, is airing today at 11 a.m. in your local time zone. And also a reminder that this evening there is the national broadcast entitled National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And it will stream live on APTN, on CBC, on SRC, on CBC Gem, EC Télé, and EC2 TV at 8 p.m. local time, 9 p.m. Atlantic, 9:30 Newfoundland. And it'll be followed by a special program produced by CBC Manitoba. Just a reminder to wear orange today, display your orange on or in your home, and to, if you're using social media, use the hashtag Light Turtle Island Orange. Thank you everyone for being with us, and I hope you'll join us for the program this afternoon and again tomorrow.